This is an old figure that I found in my collection, which was released all the way back in 2007. It's been in the sun a lot, so the box and figure definitely has changed color. This is Mai Shiranui from the fighting game Fatal Fury and King of Fighters, and this version is supposed to be from Capcom vs SNK. Since the game is so old now, it took a while to find the original artwork to see how this figure compares. After some digging, it looks like the box illustration is the actual artwork from the games. The box is a nice window box that shows the figure, with the illustration that the figure is based on prominently on the front. This figure doesn't come with any accessories, except the small flimsy base. Starting with the hair, it's painted in a nice dark brown, with various shades of lighter brown in various spots to create some highlights. It looks decent overall, but I would have preferred more highlights on her long ponytail, since it seems a bit monotone there. The hair sculpting could definitely be better though. The bangs look okay with some detail, but could have been better with some more separation. Her ponytail has some sculpting in there, but it still looks like one giant lump of plastic. I don't know if this is due to the lack of technology back then, or this is just an average sculpt in general. Her hair tie has some detail molded on the knot, and even has some highlights painted on the side part that wraps around the hair. But I think there's some underspray where the hair tie meets the hair. At least the face looks good, with good painting on the eyes and eyebrow. The iris might be too big, but the eyes do look lively, even though it is just simple paint. The nose is sculpted very nicely, and even has the nostrils done right. Her mouth has good depth, and the painting is good. The teeth could have done with a bit more detail, but maybe it would have looked weird if details on the teeth were put in. Her ears also have an impressive amount of sculpting detail, but it looks way too big and way too folded out compared to the illustration. Overall, the face and expression capture the illustration reasonably well. There's a lot of sculpted, ribbed detail on the rope-like part going around her shoulders and ending on her back. This is a separate piece from the main body, so it looks good. Sadly, there are some mold lines along it though. The clothes are painted in a more orangey red, though I think originally it's deeper red than this, since the color faded away on my figure. There are lots of sculpted folds, as well as nicely painted shadows. The white areas are actually in light pink, with slightly darker pinks to represent the shadows. I also like that the clothes are a separate piece from the body, so it does give the illusion of the cloth not always flush against the skin. The belt has some nice folds molded, but there are some mold lines also visible from the side. The belt ends in a big ribbon on her back, which looks good, with more folds and shadows painted. The front flap of her dress has very nice fabric folds sculpted and looks realistic. Her thong looks to be a separate red piece and has minimal detail on the front. There are some fabric folds on the back though, between the cheeks. Her skin tones are nicely done, with slightly darker tones in strategic areas to create shadows. The neck and chest area don't have much detail sculpted in at all, just a bit of molding for the collarbone. Her arm is actually quite impressive since it is anatomically correct. Her shoulders have some muscle definition, and her right arm has obvious bicep and tricep bulges, along with her elbow bone and forearm muscles all molded realistically. There is a small mold line down the right elbow, but it's not too noticeable. Her left arm looks good too, but also has a slight mold line along the tricep area. Her gloves are plain, with not much detail sculpted in. There's some white paint detailing, but there's over or under spray around the left hand. Her hands have decent detail, with pink painted fingernails and well-defined fingers. I like that the ring on her middle finger that keeps her glove in place is painted. One issue with her hands though is that they are far too large. The closed fan in her right hand looks okay, with decent painting, but otherwise, nothing special here. Her legs, starting from the thigh, don't have much detail at all. It's a big long smooth piece of plastic with minimal shadows. There's also a not too obvious mold line down the outside of her thighs, which is slightly distracting. The front of her knees have good realistic sculpting, especially on the right leg. The back of the knee looks okay as well with some detail there, as well as some highlight painting. Her calf is nothing special, back to being another smooth piece of plastic. There is a slight calf muscle bulge molded, but it's not very apparent. Her shoes have quite a bit of fabric fold detail on the brown sock part, and some on the red part as well. There's a little bow where the white highlight areas are, which is a nice touch. Finally, we move to the twin tails that come out of her back ribbon. They have sculpted fold lines, especially near the balls at the end, and have some shadow painting along the folds. The ends of the tail have tons of sculpt lines, like her hair. But again, like her hair, it looks like a giant lump of plastic instead of a realistic pile of fabric. This isn't a fantastic figure by any means, but since this is such an old figure, some of the technical issues like the mold lines can be forgiven. This figure is a good enough representation of the original illustration, but if the figure had just a bit more detail and fixed some of the proportional issues, like the size of her head and her hands, it would be a much better figure.